Here he is, your favorite tight end, Luke Willson from LaSalle, Ontario. I can't wait to get your take, Luke, on this whole Tagovailoa situation. He apologizes to his teammates after calling them out on Sunday after a loss. What did you make of the whole situation?
Jay, the whole thing is just really bizarre to me. And you talked about the apology. I do think it was heartfelt. I do believe that Tua's intentions were in the right place. But let's go back to the game and talk about this apology or about the tirade he went on about guys not showing up to players only meetings. I'll be honest, Jay, and say that if you're 1-5, guys being potentially late or not showing up to players only meetings is probably not at the top of the list of why you're 1-5. I've been in a lot of these player only meetings. They are, beneficial, but it's not really the meat and potatoes of what's going on. So, in a weird way, it was kind of like this passive aggressive way to say that guys aren't committed, but in the same breath, kind of didn't want to call anybody out or point the finger at any coaches. So I can see why you kind of had to backtrack that today because it's not going to sit well with the guys. And I'll add to this by saying Tuesdays are generally player only meetings or, before, after, and guys have families. So most of the time you do make it a priority to make sure you're there on time. But, if there's one week where you're late to the players only meeting, generally how that goes is you talk aren't late and be like, did I miss anything? Get me caught up. Again, most of the meat and potatoes of the game week prep does not occur in players only meetings.
In all the years you played in the National Football League, did you ever have a situation like this, Luke, where a team leader had to apologize to the rest of his team like this?
Not to this extent, Jay. There's always that moment where guys will kind of behind closed doors say, I shouldn't have acted like this. I shouldn't have said that. But we always kept it under wraps. My head goes to certain fights that occurred in practice. If the media doesn't see the fight in practice, generally speaking, it doesn't get out to the media. And again, going back to how bizarre this thing is the idea of a players only meeting is not just so the coaches aren't there, but it's the media isn't there either. So the idea that you would go forward and be like, we don't have enough commitment in the players only meeting, it's very, very hard for me to wrap my head around. And to answer your question, nothing this strange have I ever seen an apology or backtrack for because it just seems it's 100% self-inflicted.
Luke, let's move on. I wanted to ask you about the teams that 2 weeks ago were the only undefeated teams in the NFL. That would be the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 weeks ago, they were 4-0. They were riding high. 2 weeks later, they're both 4-2. And the Bills do have a bye coming up, but the Eagles have to face the Vikings this weekend. I guess my question for you, Luke, is which team are you more concerned about right now?
My answer to that would be Buffalo. The reason being is I think that Philadelphia has more mega superstars. Outside of Josh on Buffalo, it's kind of they're good players, but no mega superstars. Where Philadelphia has quite a few, so you can kind of get by and win games and chip away, even if your scheme isn't good or not executing well on mega superstars. We're in Buffalo right now. It seems like it's Josh and then everybody else. And, there's a lot of reports this week that they're looking to try and add a wide receiver because the wide receiver room is not the most explosive, not the most dynamic room out there. You really felt the loss of tight end Dalton Kincaid last week. The defense has been absolutely cooked. Buffalo's defense looks very, very bad. They look very susceptible. Bijan obviously ran all over them. So there's a lot more holes in the Buffalo Bills than I think there are in Philadelphia. But again, I know we talked about this a lot, Jay. When you have Josh Allen, it don't matter who you play. It doesn't matter where you play. You will always have a chance. So obviously that's not what Buffalo wants to rely on. I think they want to tighten the ship, kind of get this thing going in the right direction. But the good news is Josh is healthy. So they'll always be in it on Sundays.
Okay, Luke, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is about to get another wide receiver back. Rashee Rice back from suspension this weekend against your boy Pete Carroll and the Raiders. That means for the first time this season, Patty will have Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Marquise Hollywood Brown at his disposal. How worried should the rest of the NFL be right now?
Jay, they should be terrified. And you see right now what's going on. Yeah, I mean, just being honest, Kansas City's offense the last 3 weeks has looked dynamite. And adding a guy like Rashee Rice into that fold, who, whether it's this week or in the next few weeks, is going to be their number one guy, it adds a crazy dynamic to this offense. And now all of a sudden you're looking at this thing. They've improved the offensive line, and we've seen that. You've got your two running backs and Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, and you're going through with, like you said, three really elite wideouts and Travis Kelce at tight end. Look out. Now, I will say this as far as Rashee Rice goes. If you're a Chiefs fan, you're hoping that, things go seamlessly in this first week. But I wouldn't be too discouraged if there's a couple, bumps, rough patches. It's not easy just to show up in the middle of the season and say, hey, I've been suspended. I'm really ready to go. So I'm sure there'll be a few moments, maybe a couple alignment issues, but that'll get ironed out in the next few weeks.
We will talk to Luke immediately following Thursday night's AFC North clash between the Steelers and the Bengals. We'll chat with Luke then.